It's been a while since we've worked on the RX-8, but we are back in the garage and we've got a new engine to go with our rather ill car. Thankfully, we found something at a kind of cost-effective price that is actually in pretty good condition. It's only an 80,000 kilometre engine, and yes, definitely an 80,000 kilometre engine, not one of those dodgy import engines where they wind back the clock or anything. And it's also really clean. It hasn't been played with. It's just a standard, completely normal RX-8 motor, but it's in really nice, a really nice state. Perfect for our little black RX-8 here. So obviously the next thing to do is get it into the car. We're quite happy with what we've got here. Really happy with where we ended up engine-wise. We were in no rush to try and find a motor, so we took our time and we ended up with what I think is a good example of an RX-8 motor. Relatively low Ks for the car, and I mean this thing had 150 odd thousand kilometers on it, so that new engine is going to complement it perfectly. And at the end, hopefully you'll have a good, normal, healthy, happy running RX-8 again. So anyway, time to get it installed.
I just really wanted you to have a really good close look at this engine. It's just so clean compared to the one we pulled out. This thing looks beautiful. I'm so happy with where we ended up here. This engine, it really is such a far cry from the engine we pulled out. The other thing was greasy and oily and covered in grime. This is nice and clean, and there's no signs of sort of dodginess. You know, it's not like the people who pulled the motor out of the wreck that the engine came from cleaned it all afterwards to try and hide anything like you would notice, because you'd see where they've sort of scrubbed stuff. This is an engine that was just genuinely cared for, genuinely didn't get dirty and grimy. If you look past the obvious cut hoses, that's just part of having an engine removed from a car. This engine looks beautiful. Really happy with where we ended up.
Now, one slight issue is this is the first RX-8 we've ever worked on, and the old engine is now in all these boxes in bits. We kind of made a bit of a jigsaw puzzle of it. Luckily, the new engine is pretty much very complete, which is awesome for us, but we still need to remind ourselves how it all went together and how it all bolts in here. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve trying to remember all of that and work it out along the way. So we're at the mercy of the RX-8 gods here. Thankfully, we got lucky. They didn't pull the engine apart too much on us, but nonetheless, we've still got a little bit of work to do to get it all in here happily.
And so the engine is all in and bolted up to the transmission. It actually went in much easier than I'd feared. It is a pretty tight engine bay, and the engine sits really far back. It's actually kind of a mid-engine car in a lot of ways, but because the engine's so far back in the engine bay, it's really close to the firewall, it made things a little tricky getting it mated up to the transmission, but for the most part it all went together really fairly smoothly. We've got it all bolted up, and now it's mostly just a matter of putting together all the bits on the top of the motor now, the intake and all of the hoses and wiring, and then we're ready to start it.
we're making pretty good progress. So we got the engine in, bolted up to the trans relatively easily. We lost a couple of trans bolts, but then I found them at home, which was great. Most of the hoses and things have all gone on, wiring and stuff's all gone on fairly well. Most of the intake manifold was already on the car or on the engine that came from the wrecker. We've bolted up our LS coil upgrade. So it's just a matter of finishing off the last of the wiring, the last little bits of plumbing, put the airbox in. It's getting close.
It's a little bit frustrating sometimes. It's a little bit of an overly complex jigsaw puzzle in a way. When, you know, like, I guess what I mean is...
Your motor seems so much simpler.
Yeah, it's funny how, I mean, that car's sort of a 2001, this car's 2005. So it's not like there's a huge difference, but it does feel a lot more complex. But there's a few reasons for that. If you work on a standard MX-5 compared to the track car, you got a lot more complexities because you got AC and a lot more wiring and plugs and stuff, whereas that car's kind of simple fundamentals only. And yeah, so a lot of it I've pulled out and just thrown away because I didn't want. Well, she's all in. We just need oil in the engine, some fresh coolant, and we give it a bit of a jump with the battery and see if she starts. It's come a long way. Thankfully this engine went pretty quick. This engine went in pretty quick, probably with a sort of a day's work, which is very satisfying indeed. We're this close, so I'll just top up the coolant. Dad's gone to get some oil, throw that in. Moment of truth is coming very soon. Bong in. The windows are working.
Has it got petrol in it?
Don't know, it says empty at the moment. There's a few errors on the screen. Crank?
In neutral?
It's in neutral. Might need a few fuel pump primes.
Didn't sound like it was running great. A bit clicky. Exhaust leak. It did start. We did all the exhaust stuff up, didn't we?
It's all done up, but
Yeah. Well, she fired.
yeah, I was pretty positive.
It's not just the water pump pulley. We didn't forget to tighten that back up again, did we? I think that's what it is. Are you sure? It looks loose to me. This one. I think it's just this pulley. Water pump pulley was loose. Ha ha ha.
Oh, it is very loose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think next thing would be to get some fuel in it. Maybe, let's say, take it for a drive, get some fuel in it, and then
Try and burn out the cobwebs a bit.
yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's alive. It is so awesome to have this car running again. We can take her for a spin. But first, we've got to put some fresh fuel in it because it's running a little bit rough. And, well, I probably need to reset a few error codes and things on the dashboard. For example, the DSC lights come on, I think maybe because the car's been sitting on the jack stands up and it's got a little bit confused. Also, apparently when you change the engines in these cars, you need to reset the ECU in some weird way because something to do with the trigger wheel or the timing wheel. I don't know. Apparently you got to run through a bit of a procedure to kind of reset the ECU. So I'll do that as well. But nonetheless, it's alive and running on this nice, fresh, low-K engine. Super clean motor. The car is so good. I'm really happy with where things have turned out. But that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. Next time, we'll get the car cleaned up and take her for a spin. This is awesome. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.